With parts of their water system destroyed by monsoon floods, citizens in Tombstone are at the mercy of the Forest Service if they want to make repairs.
This town of Tombstone's very life is at stake here.
Their springs are caught in a patchwork of regulations and a checkerboard of land ownership stretching across our state. And it's not just water at stake. A pickup in home building could take a hit as well. It all comes down to who owns what and where, and who can sell what to whom. Tonight, whose land is this land we call Arizona? Tonight, land rights, states' rights, and politics unplugged.
And good evening, everyone. I'm Carrie Pena.
And I'm political editor Dennis Welch, and this is Politics Unplugged.
Less than 20% of land in Arizona is privately owned, and that has pitted many competing interests against each other over the years, and it puts tonight's guests in the arena. And those guests, Nick Dranias from the Goldwater Institute, Rod Jarvis, an attorney with Jennings Strouss, specializing in land use, and Connie Wilhelm from the Homebuilders Association of Central Arizona. Thank you all for being here very much. Nick, we want to start with you. This case with Tombstone is really getting a lot of attention. It may be one of the most visual cases of competing land interests. Basically, after the Monument Fire, monsoon floods destroyed parts of the water system that feed Tombstone from springs in the Huachuca Mountains. Because this is wilderness area, the feds have kept Tombstone from bringing in heavy equipment to work on the system there. Well, Goldwater Institute has sued on behalf of the city, and really, you say this is a much bigger issue we're dealing with here.
Well, water is life to the southwestern states, and particularly for Arizona. If it wasn't for the reliability of water rights and our ability to use and develop water, we wouldn't exist. Tombstone has water rights that go back 130 years to the days of Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. It is incredibly well documented. We have a chain of title that includes a letter from the Forest Service itself recognizing these rights, and yet the federal government, for the first time ever, is denying that they exist. And they're keeping us from developing the 25 springs that we have and restoring them fully, even though the city of Tombstone had a fire in December 2010 that almost burned down its downtown, even though the city of Tombstone has 4 well water sites that are 3 of which are poisoned by arsenic, and the 4th, and the only one remaining, is contaminated by arsenic. So the Forest Service is willing to risk the lives and properties of the people of Tombstone to deny water rights that are clearly established and have been in this state for 130 years.
Now, you've appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I see for the second time you've been shot down just recently. This past week, Justice Clarence Thomas refused to help or intercede in this case. Why is that?
Well, it's a very unusual request. We actually asked the Supreme Court to issue what's called an original injunction, meaning we were asking the Supreme Court to get involved even before the appeal was completed. That has only successfully happened twice in the history of the court, and so we didn't succeed. It's an extraordinary form of relief, but we felt we had no other choice. If we wait another 6 to 9 months for the appellate process to complete, every day that goes by, Tombstone could burn down, or arsenic could poison their last well water source.
So you say this is a crisis?
It's absolutely a crisis. Imagine that you've got the city of New York banning supersized diet pop and pop drinks on the guise that it's necessary public health and safety. But when an actual public health and safety issue is front and center, we can't get an injunction to allow the city to protect its own people and property.
All right, and, that kind of feeds into what this larger issue here is, and we have this map I want to take a real quick look at. This shows land ownership in Arizona. As you can see, we've got private land, BML land, Forest Service land, state parks, cities, towns, military, Indian reservations, all sorts of stuff going on over here. And let's bring in Connie Wilhelm with the Homebuilders Association. And Connie, we've seen some real nice gains in home construction this year. But these issues can pose some problems for builders such as yourself.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, we're up about 84% this year to date. And clearly, one of the biggest issues facing us now is the ability to have improved lots that we can build homes on.
And maybe explain a little bit more on that to the person back watching this right now. Why is that, why is this mix of land, why is it so challenging for home builders to go out there and do their job?
Well, it takes us a couple of years generally to entitle land, which means prepare it for us to be able to go build homes on. We have to go through planning processes with the cities. and then we have to develop product and whatever, and that generally takes about 24 months. Clearly, the future for home building is going to be in state land, because most of the land that's now in government ownership is state land that's going to be developable.
Yeah, and what's the downshot? What's the upshot for someone back home? Is this going to affect them in their daily life?
Well, I think just the availability of housing. We've got about 35,000 improved lots right now in the valley. There's probably 8,000 to 10,000 in locations that are desirable, that would be at a price point for today's market. And so it's important that we have a lot of those lots in the pipeline so that we can keep housing affordable in the state of Arizona. And as we bring more jobs in and more people in, we have a place to put them.
Well, let's take a look at another example of this patchwork of land we're talking about. Let's show you here. This is an area near Seligman. The yellow sections, look at this, are private land. The blue is Arizona State Trust land, and the green designates land in the Prescott National Forest. You can see just how complex this is. And Rod, I want to turn to you now. How difficult does this make it, not only to develop land where people want to live, but to provide transportation?
Well, the checkerboarding issue is very difficult for planning of property to begin with. If you have that kind of checkerboard, it's hard for you to predict where the roads ought to go, where the people are going to be, where's the industry going to be. So you want to try to consolidate that if you can. On top of that, as you mentioned, we've got transportation issues. That's certainly going to be a driving issue in the valley in the coming years. We've got areas of the valley that are planned for a great number of homes, and yet inadequate transportation to bring those people into town.
I'm curious, though, about the initiatives. It doesn't seem to be a popular issue with voters. What, 12 initiatives in the last 20 years have been shot down? Why is that? Is it just such a complex issue?
Well, if you're asking my opinion why it keeps getting turned down, I think there's a distrust kind of a problem. People not sure what the government's doing with their property. And it may be that they don't understand that it's the state land trust. It's not the state parks, it's state land trust. It was set up this way so that the state would be able to sell land and help to fund important state issues like education. It's the reason it has the land in the first place.
Well, complicating the land issue in Arizona is the question here that are these lands Arizona received from the feds when we became a state, that's the fact, to be held in trust for the benefit of the named beneficiaries, primarily the public schools as well as other public institutions, in order to generate revenue. State trust land is either leased for its highest and best use or sold to the highest bidder at public auction, which is mandated by law. There are more than 9 million acres of trust land.
And Connie, I just wanted to ask you real quick, is anybody, anybody associated with your organization, have they taken this issue up with our leaders in Washington, Senator John McCain, Senator John Kyle, or any of the congressional delegation? And what are they telling you?
We've not talked to them generally. We've been able to work with the state land department, but right now there is no land that's being put out there for auction at all on residential or commercial construction. The state land department has been putting out land for the cities to buy for open space, but we've not been able to do that. I think Senator Kyle is working on an issue with the mine in terms of trading lands and whatever. We've not had to have that discussion with them at this point.
Is this some issue that they maybe should be getting a little bit more engaged in?
Yes, definitely. It's certainly in the future we're going to have to deal with that whole issue of trading lands, the feds and the states, for all kinds of benefits.
Nick, you haven't had a lot of luck with the courts so far. Why do you think they're reluctant to weigh into this?
Because it's, unfortunately, it's the federal government and the federal court system, and the presumption is that the federal government wouldn't be bullying a small town like Tombstone. So it's going to take some education, and it's going to take time to persuade the federal court system that indeed the federal government is simply overreaching and bullying this small and increasingly helpless town.
Before we go to break, I just want to go to each of you and let you have the final word as to why people at home should care about this issue and pay attention to the issue.
Well, Arizona has a very difficult time developing economically when 40% or more of its land is owned by the federal government. And if the federal government on top of that is going to disrupt our ability to rely on the few rights that we do have on those lands, like water rights, then our economic development is further imperiled. So every Arizonan and everyone in the Southwest should be concerned when the federal government just tries to steal water rights that are this ancient and this well documented.
Nick's absolutely right. If you need evidence as to how important the real estate development industry and home building industry is to the state of Arizona, just look at our economy for the past few years. We want to make sure that we're positioned to move very smoothly into developing homes for incoming residents.
Well, clearly our future is in state land, and it's not even building on it, it's also sometimes just getting utilities across it and being able to have that access, have those easements, that type of thing. So it's very important for our future, transportation-wise, utility-wise, infrastructure, that we're able to go across those paths, be able to get easements, and be able to also build on that land.
We thank all of you so very much for being here and trying to help break this down to be a conversation that we can all try to understand and pay more attention to. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. When we come back, we will talk it out. And Dennis, you had an interesting interview this week with Senate candidate Richard Carmona.
Yeah, some say he may help President Obama take Arizona, but see what you think after you hear what Carmona has to say about his relationship with the president just ahead.